This VAWatchdog.org news video is brought to you by Bergman & Moore, LLC. Former VA attorneys now fighting VA for you. Call Bergman & Moore at 877-838-2889 or on the web at vetlawyers.com.
But the judge who heard the case ruled his court lacked jurisdiction in the matter.
The number one reason why the service members and veterans coming back from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars are completing suicides is because of their involvement in the war, because of the horrors that they have seen in the war, and because of the lack of access to prompt and high-quality mental health care when they return home.
When Scott Eiswert returned home, there was no Battle Mind program, and he had trouble getting an appointment to see a doctor at his local VA.
He contacted the VA here in Johnson City, and there was some process paperwork he had to go through, bureaucracy of the system, and so I said, we can't wait for that. I said, you need to get help now.
So he went to a private mental health clinic where he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. When his private insurance ran out, he went back to the VA.
Finally, a buddy of his said, just show up at the emergency room, we'll get in a whole lot faster, and so that's what he did.
VA doctors put Eiswert on a long list of medications, but his widow said none of them worked, and the counseling he got was inadequate.
He said he felt belittled because they didn't take what he was saying seriously. This is what happened to me over there. You know, and then they want to talk about, well, how was your marriage? Or how was your childhood? How was your dad with you? And he's like, well, what's that got to do with why I'm here today?
Eventually, VA doctors also found, like the local mental health clinic, that Eiswert had PTSD and a mood disorder called dysphoria. Based on that diagnosis, Eiswert 3 times filed for VA disability benefits, which would have given him and his family thousands of dollars to live on while he continued treatment for his PTSD. But the VA repeatedly turned him down, saying his PTSD condition was not incurred or aggravated by military service. In his applications for benefits, Eiswert described seeing his friends blown up by a massive roadside bomb and civilian fatalities, including body parts. But VA examiners said he did not provide enough information, such as dates of these incidents or names of any casualties, to show his mental problems were service-related.
He said he just had faces, the faces of the dead, the blood and the body parts. He goes, that's what's in his head, not dates and names.
In August, 3 months after he committed suicide, the VA said it now had corroborated evidence that Eiswert's PTSD was the result of his service in Iraq, and granted his widow a few $1,000s in disability benefits. We asked Dr. Peak about Eiswert's case.
You know, if you can give me the specific case, I'll be happy to track it down and get back with you about the details. Possible that we'd made an error, but you know.
1 week after that interview, the VA said it had made an error and increased Eiswert's disability benefits to about $10,000.
This is a tragic case, but it's happening all across America. Right now, because the VA system has become so adversarial, and because VA is under an enormous burden of demand from hundreds of thousands of Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans filing claims, they don't have the time and the staff to provide the level of assistance that they should. And that's a national tragedy.
Dr. Peak says the VA is getting better at dealing with the huge influx of veterans with mental problems.
It's a sad fact that some of our warriors, some of our nation's finest citizens, are wasting their lives through suicide.
It's launched a new ad campaign, established a suicide hotline, and hired thousands of new mental health workers.
I think there's no system in this country better prepared than the VA. I will tell you that we have been on a glide path up in terms of dealing with the mental health issues for our veterans. We have hired 4,000, in 2.5 years, 4,000 new mental health workers. We have about 17,000 folks overall in mental health across the nation.
Dr. Peak says, based on new recommendations from a blue ribbon panel, he will design a study to identify suicide risks among veterans, increase efforts to screen for suicide risk, and improve efforts to prescribe appropriate medications for suicidal behavior. And Admiral Mike Mullen, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said recently he wants every soldier returning from combat to undergo a psychiatric screening by a trained medical professional. Meanwhile, Tracy Eiswert now wonders whether husband Scott would still be alive today if the VA had given him the proper medical treatment and disability benefits it now says he was entitled to before he took his life.
VAWatchdog.org, the nation's #1 independent veterans website, on the web at VAWatchdog.org.